All right, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody. Today is Monday, February 28th, 2022. And look, I'm going to be honest with you folks. I was initially going to do a Kraken this morning, but then I said to myself, okay, you know what? Let's hold off and see if some other news comes out today, not just Russia-Ukraine news. And folks, wherever I look, it's all Russia-Ukraine news. Now, I was not going to do a Kraken today, but at the same time, I also felt obligated to those that so kindly and so I appreciate so very much look forward to these Krakens, especially on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So I'm making this Kraken just to let you folks know that, yes, I am alive, I am here and all that stuff. But for those that are not interested in listening to global affairs all around the world, I don't blame you if you don't want to listen to this, simply because, like, folks, I'm not kidding. I've dug deep to look for other stories to report on. There's little to nothing. The entire mainstream media global apparatus is very heavily focused on Russia and Ukraine. So with that being said, let's just jump into it. And again, I totally understand if you want to turn this off or you want to turn away or whatever, because, you don't want to hear the update on Russia, Ukraine. You just want to come back to the news when sort of things simmer down with respects to other things being covered. I totally get that. But let's jump into it for those that would like to see and hear. So at this point, I'm actually just going to go off Disclosed TV and a couple other news websites in addition to Twitter, because I can't go to New York Times, I can't go to BBC, I can't go to Al Jazeera, because it's all Russia-Ukraine stuff, right? So let's start. Germany is going to arm itself an additional 100 billion euros for the nation's defense this year, and more than 2% of GDP for defense from 2022 onwards, Chancellor Scholz has announced. If Germany spends 2% on GDP, it will be the world's third biggest military spender. 2% of 3.9 trillion GDP totals $78 billion per year, which is far bigger than the FR, UK, and Russia. So again, than France, UK, and Russia. So take that as you will, as you see fit. Now, for those that want to ask my perspective on what's happening in Ukraine and Putin moving in and all that, it's really complicated. And I'm not saying that with respects to the situation overall, with respects to Ukrainians who want to stay Ukrainian, others who want to stay Russian. It's very complicated. I don't claim to have the answer, but I know a lot of you like to hear my opinion. I think there's a very strong propaganda apparatus occurring on both sides, to be fair. It's just my humble opinion. I have to say that for YouTube, but I think it's occurring on both sides, both on the Russian side and on the American side. Now, and the Western side and the NATO side. Now, I don't believe that this was justification for Putin to go in and, go take Ukraine, assuming that's accurate. I know Putin called it a special military operation, but again, we also have to be consistent here with these words. Whether you call it a special military operation or Ukraine invasion, it's still, you're going in, right? Whether it's an incursion, an invasion, obviously it's up for debate there, because an incursion is when they go in and they leave, if I understand that correctly. An invasion is when they go in and they stay. Trump, obviously, as many of you I'm sure heard, complimented Putin, saying he's got very savvy and admirable gutsy skills or something like that for going in. I laughed simply because whether you like him or not, it's Trump. It's just a Trump thing to say. And by the way, on a quick side note, that speaks to a larger picture of the branding and marketing that Trump, whether intentionally or unintentionally, used over the last 5 years roughly. I mean, to say 5 years ago, oh, that's such a Trump thing to say, was very unlikely. Nowadays, it's, at least I hear it all over the place. But anyways, again, the next thing is that the head of the Russian Orthodox Church, Patriarch Kirill, calls Putin's opponents in Ukraine, quote, evil forces, and believes, quote, we must not allow dark and hostile external forces to laugh at us, end quote. Again, it's siding with Putin because obviously they don't want to ruffle his feathers, but at the same time, this may be that of a personal belief of the patriarch. We see here Russians search for cash at ATM machines as the West imposes severe sanctions on banks, right? So again, big picture, as we always say, the only people that suffer are the innocent ones. I want to be very clear. I know many Russian people. I'm speaking to some that live in Russia right now. They're regular people. They don't want these problems, right? And with that being said, though, I'm not saying I speak for every Russian when I say this, right? But again, when you see, them lining up to ATMs to pull out cash because of the sanctions, I mean, yeah. It's concerning. Okay, I'm going to step away from the Ukraine thing for a second. According to Breaking 911 News, California, Washington, and Oregon are going to scrap school mask mandates. That's great to hear. The other thing, too, as well, that I wanted to mention is that I can say confidently within Canada, from my understanding at the very least, March 1st, starting tomorrow, to fly domestically within the country, you will not need to be vaccinated. So it seems as though the Trudeau administration seems to be caving to the pressure in general, but that only speaks to me personally to a larger picture, which is that maybe the World Economic Forum, individuals, if you will, and the Bill Gates of the world, who don't seem as happy about the vaccination rollout program not going as good as they thought. It seems like this didn't go as well as they had hoped. Now, with that being said, that shouldn't mean we should let our guard down. There's a lot of people saying, oh, the elites are falling all over the place. The trucker convoy, politics, wars are starting for the sake of distraction and whatnot. Things are really changing. I want to agree with that. I really do. But because we've been lied to so many times over so many years, even before I was born, the problem then becomes, again, when you lie so much, when the truth does come, if it does come, you don't believe it. Right? And I see both sides of that. I really, really do. Speaking of, so the next thing is that, let's see, Andriy Zagorodinuk, please forgive me, Dinuk, if I butchered his name, former Ukrainian defense minister, says that Belarus is about to declare war on Ukraine. Quote, there is information about airborne troopers from Belarus loaded on the planes to enter Ukraine, end quote. That didn't take much for me to predict with respects to, again, Putin and the prime minister or president of Belarus getting along very well, and all of that. Clearly there's, a connection there. It's a chess game. It's a chess game. The next thing is that British Foreign Secretary Elizabeth Truss said she would unconditionally support individual Brits who decide to go to war with Russian troops in Ukraine. I know a couple of individuals myself from Texas, not well, but, they flew out there because they're from Ukraine to go fight, and I respect that. That's, patriotism. Who am I to say if that's incorrect or correct, right? The next thing is that Russia claims that Ukraine had agreed to meet its delegation in the Belarusian city of Gomel. The move came after Zelensky had a phone call with Lukashenko, the RIA reports. The negotiations will take place in the border area between Ukraine and Belarus, the RIA adds, citing a local Belarus news site. Okay. Some people are saying that the Russian invasion is not going as good as initially people had thought. Again, I want to be careful with these words. We have to be vigilant of people like, for example, even Western military generals. They're obviously going to be on the side of the propagandistic, allies arm. When I say allies, I refer to MI6, Israel, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, UK, obviously America too. That whole conglomerate there of media reporting, so to speak, with respects to, again, its intelligence apparatuses directly intertwined in that. So I don't know what to think with respects to is this really an invasion? Is this it's all wordplay, it's all strategy. If things didn't go as well or are truly not going as well, Putin can easily say, well, it was just a special military operation, it wasn't a full-on invasion. Others could say, no, this is a full-on invasion, things didn't go as well. Again, the first couple nights, as I kept my finger on the pulse, or at least tried to, based on some outlets that were more so on on Telegram and on the dark web reporting on the ground, seemed that Russia did a terrible, because again, any type of war is terrible, but Russia did a vast number on Ukraine. Also, I have to be careful because of YouTube here, and accounts are being removed because of this, but keep in mind the alleged labs underground in Ukraine, the B labs. I don't even, I got to self-censor because I'm afraid I'm going to get nicked just for saying that, but if you, actually, you know what? Hold on. We can check my Twitter for those on YouTube. Take a look here, folks, on the right-hand side of the screen. Sadly, I cannot say it, but you see right here what I just highlighted? Right. I'm just staying quiet for a second so you folks can read it. So, again, the self-censorship is ridiculous. But anyways, the next thing is, I just wanted to say as well, some people are wondering, for example, is this a sign of, Russia messing up on its logistical operations and things like that? Now, I'm hesitant to say things like that for or against Putin or Russia because I don't know what's truth and what's not. This is the other problem. Now, big picture of things, I think that, truthfully, in my humble opinion, NATO wanted this. They wanted conflict to make Putin push back, and although it could be very strongly argued that Putin could have pushed back much lighter, he could have pushed back in a more economic way rather than that of a kinetic warfare way. I also think it's fairly okay to say that it was not Russia by any means when you look at the grand scale of these events starting back in 2013, if I believe, 2012 roughly, that instigated this. When we really look at it, again, I'm saying this in my humble opinion, I got to be careful because of YouTube. If my account was verified or a little bit larger, if I had like a 6-figure following on YouTube, I'd be able to say this without giving all these warnings. But anyways, we'll deal with that when we get there. The Americans conducted a coup against the Ukrainian administration, an alleged democratically elected Ukrainian president, I think in 2013 or 14, right? For those on Patreon, you'll see we delved real deep into that with Monica Perez on our members episode there that we just put out a handful of hours ago. So again, let's continue on. It's very conflictual. I'm not Ukrainian myself. I know many Russians, many Ukrainians. Truthfully, folks, the vast majority of them are okay living in peace. But again, I know it's not that simple. The next thing is that Putin orders Russia's nuclear deterrent forces on alert, raising the threat that tensions with the West over Russia's invasion of Ukraine could lead to the use of nuclear weapons. We then see that the European Union banned RT and Sputnik News along with their subsidiaries. Let's see, quote, "We are developing tools to ban their toxic and harmful disinformation in Europe," end quote, President of the EU Commission Ursula von der Leyen said. I'm of the humble opinion that it should not have been banned simply because this is not, I don't think one governing body should have a say over multiple countries. Again, this is one of the things I personally don't like about the European Union. If one decision is made, it applies to all the nations generally. And that's what I don't like. And the reason even if it is disinformation, I'm of the opinion of let the people discern and decide for themselves. That's just my opinion. I understand there's a rebuttal to that, and I get that. But the next thing is that Ukraine informed the International Atomic Energy Agency, or the IAEA, today, when was this? Yesterday, I believe, that missiles hit the site of a radioactive waste disposal facility in Kiev. There's been no damage so far, but the IAEA calls an extraordinary meeting to, quote, discuss the current situation in Ukraine. The next thing is that FIFA banned the Russian flag and anthem in its matches, ordering the Russian team to play home internationals at neutral venues. Poland says that FIFA's plan is totally unacceptable and reconfirms that it will not play against Russia. This is what happens when you have institutions getting involved, right? And I'm not saying that's a bad thing nor a good thing. The question is, should they get involved at all? When I say institutions, I'm speaking entertainment, sports, media, again. The next thing is that the European Union will supply fighter jets to the Ukraine, and Belarus abandoned its non-nuclear status. Constitutional referendum was approved by the majority, proclaims the Central Election Commission. Again, we have to consider how close the Belarusian government is with Putin's government, with the Kremlin, right? Particularly Putin himself and the Belarusian president or prime minister. So, the next thing is that Toyota suspended its operation on all domestic plants in Japan, citing a cyber attack on its parts producer. We got to keep in mind too, folks, right? A lot of people think, is this sort of, is China watching this? Is the CCP watching this to see, is this, what they'll do with Taiwan, depending on how the Biden administration reacts? It's all strategy, guys. And again, the only ones that suffer are the people that just want to live life, okay? Now, allegedly, there's been negotiations between Russia and Ukraine that commenced at the Belarus border. So I believe this is today as of the day I'm reporting this, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. So we'll see what happens there. The next thing is that websites of major Russian media outlets TASS, Kommersant, Izvestia, Fontaka, and RBC are offline, some hacked with an anti-war message. It's been proclaimed that Anonymous, the hacking group, is doing this. They've been trending on Twitter, things like that. However, I've also spoken to people that are more, I guess you could say, a little more well-versed in that area of things, and they say that the real Anonymous died out 2010, 2012 time because the NSA and the CIA took out the real good ones. And when I mean took out, I mean gave them a choice. Either you come work for us or you go to jail. So allegedly that disbanded the loose conglomerate of anonymous hackers and whatnot. Maybe they revitalized, they rebuilt, I don't know. But again, it's also possible that this, again, is some intelligence agency of any nation claiming to be anonymous, right? The next thing is that Putin begins his emergency economic meeting in response to sanctions and labeled the West, quote, as an empire of lies, end quote. Russia then closed its airspace for airlines from 36 countries. Again, to make of this as you will. It's hard to say or see what's happening with respects to all of this and the strategy behind it. It's too early for me to tell. There's so much going on as we speak. The next thing is that Switzerland adopts all of its European Union sanctions against Russia and closed its airspace to Russian airlines. The Swiss Federal Council announced. Let me see here, quote, and I quote, "Playing into the hands of an aggressor is not neutral," end quote, says President of the Swiss Confederation Ignacio Casas. Again, they're their own country. I respect it. I understand that. So be it. I know that may be inconsistent of me relative to what my views were, what I just reported on earlier. So this is what I mean when I say it's complicated, guys. The next thing is that Russian ships are banned from docking in British ports officially, according to the Secretary of State for Transport in the UK. The next thing is that Ukraine's President Zelensky signed a fast-track European Union membership application in military wear with indoor barricades behind him. So this is Mr. Zelensky. He signed all of this. I gotta say, in terms of a marketing or branding standpoint, he's holding a very good posture on social media and all that. Now, again, not to say that's legitimate. A lot of people are also saying as well, a lot of these I think Miss Ukraine from these beauty pageants and whatnot are taking up arms. Some people are saying it's pure propaganda to motivate Ukrainians to fight. Others say it's actually happening. Certain politicians and their wives allegedly are doing so as well. But again, it's hard to say because the pictures do look quite posed and set up. So again, make of that as you will. It's not for me to say. The thing about about Zelensky fast-tracking EU membership, this is interesting because it's always been said, regardless from whatever pundits or experts, that once you get into the EU, that's how they get you into NATO. And when I say they, we're talking about, the West, the Americans, you name it. So make of that as you will. The next thing is that FIFA and UEFA have suspended all Russian clubs and national teams from all competitions until further notice. Russia will not be able to play in the 2022 World Cup in Qatar if the crisis is not resolved. Okay, again, make of that as you will. The next thing is that Monaco, the wealth hub of the super rich, adopts its European Union sanctions against Russia, basically taking the same thing, the same stance. The next thing is that a reporter asked Biden, should Americans be worried about nuclear war? Biden simply answered with no. It was a very impromptu answer, and it was something that I don't think his press team would have wanted him to give an answer to anything, let alone a nuclear question. But again, I don't see what him saying yes would have done any good for anyways, to be quite honest. Now, with that being said, again, for those that listen to this channel and the show, you know that I have a confirmation bias with respects to nukes. I'll be totally open about it. I think the ETs will not allow it. But again, the next thing is that International Ice Hockey Federation, IIHF, has suspended all Russian and Belarusian national and club teams from competitions until further notice. Makes sense. Again, Russia, Belarus, this is Putin, and I believe the prime minister or president of Belarus. Again, they're on the same side, but they don't want their people fighting and distracting from, all the things that they're currently pursuing, which is, again, I don't really know. When you say, Dave, what do you mean, Dave? Putin's pursuing an invasion. Is he? And what I mean is that, is it much deeper than that? And I'm really trying to ask that. I'm not trying to divert or make Putin seem innocent, but it's possible. It really is. So I'm really sorry if I left anything out, folks, with respects to reporting. And I only say that because things are coming out by the minute, by the second. Sometimes it's verified, sometimes it's not. And even then, who's to say if you can verify it, as we talk about on the show all the time. So with that being said, we will do another Kraken Wednesday to follow up with this. I hope there's news outside of this. Again, I even went to the business section of mainstream media websites, which I normally never do. And it was still all Russia, Ukraine stuff. So with that being said, thank you so very much, folks. And we'll catch you all very, very soon. Cheers.